Hello again, and welcome to another Warrior Creed live stream with me, the radical Majid Nawaz. And today's topic, as you can see on your screens, Iranian theocracy threatens to attack the UK. We're going to be breaking down for you in this stream the latest with President Trump's attempted resumption of the ceasefire, the various war hawks involved in attempting to persuade him to continue the war. Of those will, of course, be the Iranian regime, the Iranian theocracy, but not just the Iranian regime. Netanyahu is currently in Washington, D.C., attempting to convince Trump to engage in regime change. So the Likudnik Zionists, along with the theocratic Shia Islamists, both agree on one thing, and that is that they should continue fighting each other. Whereas President Trump now is attempting once more, urged by the peacemakers in this equation, such as Pakistan and other interested parties in the Middle East, President Trump is attempting once more to return to the negotiating table. But in the meanwhile, Iran and the Iranian theocracy had threatened to attack the UK. We're going to go into a bit about what capabilities operationally the Iranian theocracy has in the UK and some of the front organizations they've been using to be able to convey their threats directly to this country, and the responsibility of the UK government, in particular the Home Office, in failing to keep the Iranian theocracy and its threats to the British public in check. So don't go anywhere. That's all coming up here on the Warrior Creed live stream right after the opening credits.
You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge. Witness the strength of street knowledge. Street knowledge.
Terrorize the jam like troops in Pakistan.
Street knowledge. Street knowledge. Quick service announcement brought to you in part by Warriors.
Damn, that shit was dope.
The Warrior Creed live stream joins you again in this summer of 2026, discussing the Iranian theocracy and its recently made threats, not just to the UK, but also to the US, and updating you all on President Trump's peace efforts and those that would otherwise have him go to war again or resume war with the Iranian theocracy. Netanyahu currently in DC, attempting with Zelensky to persuade Trump to return to a war footing rather than make peace with the Iranian theocracy. But the Iranian theocracy threatens to attack the UK. That's the topic for today. We're going to break it all down for you. But meanwhile, here is the cartoon that we're using for today's stream. I can get out of this anytime I want, says a satirical President Trump with a alien-like leech on his face named the Iran War, symbolizing the point here, which is quite clear, that once you start a war, it becomes very difficult to get out of it again. And that we felt a graphic for the purposes of this stream, we felt was very appropriate. Now, if we move to going through the latest for you in terms of threats and exactly what has been said and done, you can see the title on your screens now. The Iranian theocracy threatens to attack the UK. We're going to break that all down for you. We're going to start specifically with a breakdown of what has happened. And there you can see it in the Times. UK ready to shoot down Iranian missiles after threat to RAF base. That is from the 23rd of July in the Times by one Charlie Parker. Now, the subheading says the government, let's reduce that size again for you. The subheading says, government says armed forces can counter Iranian strikes as Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or the IRGC, says British monarchy is the main cause of the region's misfortune. So for whatever reason, the Iranian theocracy has decided to blame the British monarchy for the war that America and Israel are engaging in against them inside their own country. You can try and figure out, or scratch your head and figure out exactly how that logic works, but let's read for you from the Times. This is now again up on your screens. We'll just read it for you as well. It says, Iran warned on Thursday that RAF Fairford in Gloucestershire is a legitimate target, that's a quote, for strikes after the US Air Force used the base to launch a B-1 bomber raid. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, singled out the British monarchy as the main cause of the misfortunes of the people of our region. Such attacks could involve sabotage or direct drone and missile strikes. It is no empty threat, according to defense analysts. Iranian missiles large enough to destroy a building could theoretically reach Britain, but would probably be shot down before reaching it, senior military sources told The Times. In March, Tehran launched 2 ballistic missiles towards joint UK-US military base on Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean, about 3,800 kilometers or 2,360 miles from Iran. The first projectile was intercepted by a missile fired from a US warship, while the second fell after traveling 1,990 miles, some 400 miles from the base in the Chagos Islands. So there's the threat. It was reported in the Times, and also along with detail of where they have attempted to attack us before. You will, of course, remember that when this current latest episode of conflict, the American-Israeli conflict with Iran, started, the Iranians decided to randomly attack their neighbors, the Sunni Muslim Arabs. We covered this extensively on Radical Media. And they also decided to lob a couple of missiles over to British territory in the Chagos Islands, and those missiles, one of them was intercepted and the other one failed. But this is the news of them now resuming their threat because of the fact that we have allowed for the US to use RAF effort in Gloucestershire to launch a B-1 bomber raid. The Iranians have resumed their threatening posture towards the UK. Now, it's not just the UK. Here again on the 28th of July, the Times, you can see on your screens, reports with the headline, Iran releases video on how to kill Melania Trump. Subheading, the clip claims that advanced signs of the First Lady's whereabouts include public bins missing from street corners and manholes being welded shut. This is just to read an extract for you. It's a bit of a creepy article where the Iranian regime has advised random members of the public that they're calling freedom fighters on how to target specifically the First Lady of the United States of America. And to read from the Times, Iranian media has released a video claiming to show how best to target Melania Trump in an assassination. Tasnim news agency, which is close to Tehran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, published a video that began with a slide reading "Where to kill Melania," with the First Lady's profile drawn in blood. The video goes on to encourage, quote, global freedom fighters to assassinate her, and ends with a warning to her son, Baron Trump, wait for us. That's clearly a threat to President Trump's son as well as to Melania Trump. And it is something that is, of course, the true to form for the Iranian regime. Their posture towards us has for a very long time been hostile. The Telegraph reports on the 25th of July, 2026, in an article by Kasra Arabi, headlined, Iran has already invaded Britain. Burnham, that's our new prime minister, just hasn't noticed yet. Now, the reason we are bringing this one to you is to make the point, as is on your screens now, that it isn't just because of this latest round of conflict, and we use that word deliberately, latest round of conflict between the Americans, Israelis, and the Iranians. We don't say here on Radical Media that President Trump and Israel started a war against Iran. This is, yes, a very lazy and populist left-wing characterization of the war, but it is lazy being the operative word there in what we just said, because it ignores the fact that the conflict in the Middle East involving, not started by, involving America, Israel, but not just America and Israel, involving Saudi Arabia, involving Iran, involving Lebanon, involving Yemen, involving Iraq. This is a conflict that has been going on since the founding of the Islamic theocracy, or the Islamist theocracy to be more precise, inside Iran. Because, of course, they have always believed, since Khomeini founded the Shia Islamist theocracy in Iran, they have always believed in, quote, exporting the revolution. And in pursuit of exporting the revolution, the Iranian theocracy was arming and funding armed paramilitary organizations not just in Lebanon in the form of Hezbollah, not just in Gaza in the form of Hamas, but also in Yemen in the form of the Houthi movement, and in Iraq, named Kataib Hezbollah, and so on and so forth. There has been a long war in the Middle East involving these countries. The recent attacks by America and Israel, as regrettable as many people find them, did not start a war against Iran. They were merely the next stage in an ongoing long war involving Iran, yes, but also involving Israel, involving America. Of course, America had already invaded Iraq under Bush. So this is a long war that has been going on for all of our lifetimes since the founding of the Shia Islamist theocracy in Iran, founded by Khomeini, and then, of course, led by Supreme Leader Khamenei after his death. And now, of course, Khamenei's son has taken over, because Trump, when he entered this long conflict in the recent chapter, bombed Khamenei, the father, and took out his entire entourage and some of his family members. Mujtaba Khamenei, the son, is now rumored to be the supreme leader. Point being, this is merely one additional chapter in an ongoing story of the long war in the Middle East, and we hope it will be concluded soon. But it isn't accurate, as lazy populist figures on the left portray, to say that President Trump started a war against Iran. That isn't accurate, though there's many things to blame America for. But let's be accurate. This war has been going on. I mean, the Iranian theocracy was directly arming and funding militia in Yemen, directly arming and funding militia in Lebanon. Does that mean, we've got to factor that in when we talk about who started what, and understand it's an incredibly complicated, long war in the Middle East that hopefully is near resolution. Now, to read again from the article that's on your screens in the Telegraph there, back at again to the headline there, 25th of July, Iran has already invaded Britain. Burnham just hasn't noticed yet. This is a key paragraph to the point we just made there about how the war began. It says, to be clear, the Iranian regime's hostile threats and acts against Britain would have taken place irrespective of Burnham's green light to US President Donald Trump. This is evidence that, of course, our new Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, has given a green light to the Americans to continue using our bases, but only for quote-unquote defensive purposes, which was the fudge that Keir Starmer put in place. To carry on reading from the article, this is evidenced by the fact that it attacked our base in Cyprus, the Iranians attacked our base in Cyprus before Starmer agreed to allow Washington to use British bases. In other words, they're not just attacking us because we agreed that the Americans could use our bases. They were attacking us before we agreed the Americans could use our bases. Again, indicating this is a long war that's been going on for a long time. To carry on reading, not to mention the 20+ terrorist attacks the IRGC has sought to carry out in Britain in just the past 4 years. This latest chapter of the war between America and Israel and Iran has been going on for less than 4 years. But for more than 4 years, the IRGC has already initiated 20 attempts to attack Britain. It isn't as simple as saying, oh, they wouldn't be doing this to us if we hadn't helped the Americans in attacking them and starting a war against them. That is a very simplistic, lazy, and ill-informed, uneducated analysis of this war, and it should be corrected. Whenever you hear anyone say that, we should correct them, because it's wrong. It is also wrong what Israel's doing under Netanyahu, yes, but it isn't right to correct a wrong by stating another wrong on top of it. This American-Israeli initiation of the latest chapter of this conflict didn't start a new war. This is the latest chapter in an ongoing long-term war in the Middle East. Put simply, to carry on reading, the Islamic regime in Iran has long been at war with Britain. The latest example of this is the Telegraph's revelation that the IRGC's Unit 700 branch has been exploiting the small boats crisis to smuggle Islamic revolutionary agents into the UK and position them across London. As one Iranian regime official brazenly told the Telegraph on Friday, listen up, we do not need a missile to target London. While shocking, the report should not be surprising. Now, what do you think they meant by that? We do not need a missile to target London because they have human resources available inside London to do the job. Anyway, that proves the point, really. We feel that this is a long war. It's inaccurate to say it was started by any one party, such as America or whatever. However, what is accurate, as you can see on your screens now, reported by Axios on the 27th of July, is that President Trump is attempting to settle the war. That is accurate to say. He's attempting to end it. Now, you can see the Axios headline, Trump to Axios, I'm ready for strong military action if Iran talks fail. This is the latest round, once again, of Trump attempting to negotiate a political solution to the conflict with the Iranian theocracy. We're just going to read the Barak Ravid article, a paragraph from it in Axios for you. It says, President Trump told Axios on Monday that he decided to pause US strikes on Iran in order to give negotiations another chance. This is a yet again, don't get confused. Yes, this may feel like Groundhog Day. Yes, that has happened before. Yes, Trump has attempted negotiations in the past with the regime, not least, of course, the memorandum of understanding that we covered here on Radical Media. But it's happening again. And at the time, we did say to you that if the Iranians don't play ball, Trump will resume the bombing as a tactic of negotiation until they're ready to play ball again in negotiations. You can go back and check our streams. That is exactly what we said, that for President Trump, bombing and military action is part of the negotiation, which is why it's no surprise to us that he has returned to the negotiating table. So to carry on reading from Axios, President Trump told Axios on Monday that he decided to pause US strikes on Iran in order to give negotiations another chance, but stressed that he could order a return to expanded military operations if diplomacy fails. That's true to form for Trump. To carry on reading, the talks are being conducted mainly between Iran and Oman, but Qatar, Pakistan, Egypt, and Trump's envoys, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, are actively involved. Trump said he decided to pause strikes on Friday because the countries that are mediating, as well as other countries in the region, asked him to give negotiations another chance. It's worth it. To carry on, all of the people that deal with Iran asked me, this is Trump saying it, don't fire, Trump said, stressing that he thinks Iran wants to make a deal. And there we have it. So Trump's back on the negotiating table, which is a good thing. He's ready to resume military strikes, as the Axios headline here says, if those talks fail. But ultimately, military action and talks for Trump are all in the, let's say they are all options on the table to resolve the conflict. But the purpose of President Trump and the aim is very clear. He wants to solve the problem once and for all. He wants to finally put an end to the long war in the Middle East. Not the chapter that he started recently with Netanyahu, but the long war in the Middle East. And that is what we refer to here on Radical Media, that our regulars will be aware of as the Grand Regional Settlement for Peace. That's what Trump's working on. And that's what needs to be given an opportunity, the long peace. Now, there are some parties that oppose that, and they are actively working to undermine it. And one of them is Netanyahu. So we're going to demonstrate that. He's in DC at the moment. And Netanyahu, another one, of course, is the Iranian theocracy itself. They, as we've just read, want to keep attacking Britain, our allies, and, of course, their neighbors, the Sunni Muslim Arabs, as well as in America. We just demonstrated that they're threatening Melania Trump. But also, not just the Iranian theocracy, but the Likudnik Zionist regime in Israel, led by Netanyahu, also seeks to continue the war. Now, this isn't any longer in dispute. When we first started speaking in this way on Radical Media, we lost a lot of our natural supporters because of our work on countering Islamist extremism and terrorism. Some of them thought that that means that we should be providing a blank check to whatever Israel wants to do. False. And that is now being demonstrated that even President Trump is not providing a blank check to Israel and Netanyahu for whatever they want to do in the region. And you can see in the Times article here exactly what we mean. It's dated the 26th of July. It's headlined, Netanyahu heads to Washington as relations with Trump deteriorate. Our regulars will know we've been saying that's going to happen for a long time. In fact, and we'll put it in the dispatch tomorrow when we publish the written version of this stream. One of the things we said with an article headlined, quite literally, Netanyahu has become a liability for Trump. And that's what this article was about. This one just from yesterday in the Times, saying Netanyahu heads to Washington as relations with Trump deteriorate. The subheading, Israeli Prime Minister continues to push for regime change, surprise, surprise, in Tehran as he prepares to meet US President for the first time since war was launched in February. Of course, Netanyahu's always wanted regime change. It's why he pushed Trump to join this latest chapter in the war in the first place. Now we're going to read a chunk of that article from yesterday's Times to demonstrate the point for everybody that Trump and Netanyahu are not on exactly the same page. Trump wants to solve the long war with a long peace. We're calling that the Grand Regional Settlement for Peace. Netanyahu wants regime change. They're not the same thing. And now have a listen. The Times has finally come around to realizing they're not the same thing either. This is, of course, a long time in the making. Our regulars will know that we've been saying this since 2022, since setting up Radical Media, after LBC cancelled me from their show. By the way, mind you, we will be resuming legal action. We haven't forgotten that, LBC. We're coming for you. But that's a different story. The Times has finally caught up with the point that Israeli and American foreign policy in the Middle East is not on the same page. Let's read for you from the Times yesterday. Benjamin Netanyahu urged President Trump not to abandon regime change in Tehran before a White House meeting on Tuesday, that's today, as the US and Iran paused hostilities after almost 2 weeks of attacks. So regime change is what Netanyahu wants. Trump wants a long peace. To carry on reading from the Times, the Israeli Prime Minister said the conflict could end only with the fall of the regime or a clear change of course, as he prepared for his first meeting with Trump since the US and Israel launched their military campaign on February the 28th. Now in bold, pay attention. Analysts said that the US and Israel had increasingly divergent aims. Well, our regulars won't be surprised by that news whatsoever, but there's still a popular sentiment out there that Israel owns America or America owns Israel or vice versa, when the truth is they're two independent countries. Yes, they are allies and have close dealings with each other, close cooperation, and in this conflict, clearly joint military operations, but they are not on the same page when it comes to the aim of what they want. It's like Britain and Iraq joining America in the Iraq War. Yes, we are allies. Yes, we engaged in joint military operations under President Bush and Tony Blair in Iraq, but we clearly had different aims. And of course, that became apparent over time, not least in the style with which we engaged in our military operations in Iraq and eventually in Afghanistan, and also eventually when we withdrew. To carry on reading from the Times, analysts said the US and Israel had increasingly divergent aims as Netanyahu seeks greater damage to the Iranian regime with one eye on his re-election chances in the Israeli general election in October. And Trump seeks an exit strategy as November's midterm elections loom. Asked by Fox News what it would take to end the war, Netanyahu mentioned Iranian regime change several times, despite Trump's repeated insistence that is not a war goal. Netanyahu is due to fly to Washington on Monday, that was yesterday, to attend the funeral of Lindsey Graham. Did I just say that? Did I just say Lindsey Graham? Apologies. Of course, he probably was gay, but he's dead, so we shouldn't speak about him in ill terms. But, you know, Freudian slip. All right, start again, guys. Apologies, right? Where were we? Netanyahu is due to fly to Washington on Monday to attend the funeral of Lindsey Graham, a pro-Israel Republican senator, enabling him to meet Trump after several earlier attempts were rebuffed by the White House amid worsening relations between the two leaders. Trump confirmed last month reports that they held an expletive-laden phone exchange about Israel's continuing attacks on Hezbollah in Lebanon that undermined attempts at a ceasefire in the Gulf. Do you remember that? So Trump wanted peace. Netanyahu started bombing Lebanon, and the Iranians broke the peace because they said, if you want peace, why are you still bombing Lebanon? Israel's meant to be with you. Either stop them or the peace is off. Trump got very angry. We covered it here on Radical Media at the time. Our regulars will remember it. And he did the following. We're going to go back to reading from the Times article published yesterday. Listen to this. Trump admitted he called Netanyahu fucking crazy. That's in the Times. Trump admitted it, yeah? Trump admitted he called Netanyahu fucking crazy. Trump ordered a halt on Friday to 13 consecutive nights of US attacks on Iranian targets, reportedly after resistance from General Dan Kane, chairman of the US Joint Chiefs of Staff, who warned this could dangerously deplete missile interceptors in the region that protect US bases and allies. The US military asked Trump to rein it in, and Trump called Netanyahu fucking crazy. So it's clear now that they have divergent aims, even though if Trump does return to bombing Iran occasionally, that's only because for him, and it's always been the case, bombing is part of his negotiation arsenal. He will resume bombing if he feels negotiations aren't going well until the Iranian theocrats are suitably softened enough to continue negotiations. That's always been Trump's style. But the question is, what are the aims? Trump's aim is not regime change. Trump's aim in the region is the long peace, what we're calling the Grand Regional Settlement for Peace. It's an end to the long war. What do we mean by long here? At least my entire lifetime. I'm now 48 years old. I cannot remember a time when the Middle East was not at war or in conflict. Trump wants to end the long war. Netanyahu wants to carry it on. Because if you go for regime change in Iran, that means carrying the war on. So one party that wants to carry the war on is Iran, or the Iranian Theocracy, and the other, of course, are the Likud Zionists currently running Israel under Netanyahu. But it isn't just those two factions. It's also inside America. It is the neocon faction that wants to carry the war on as well. They are not the same thing as MAGA. Again, it is politically lazy and illiterate to consider MAGA and the neocons as the same thing in Washington, D.C. And this article here demonstrates it. This is again from the Times today. He loves blowing stuff up, how Lindsey Graham pushed Trump on Iran. This is Senator Lindsey Graham, who's, of course, died now, and his funeral was yesterday. This is why Zelensky and Netanyahu are in Washington, D.C. They were there yesterday to attend his funeral, and they thought they'd avail the opportunity to meet Trump because Trump had been rebuffing their meeting requests up until now. And because of the death of Lindsey Graham, they finally got the opportunity to say, hey, we're going to be in DC anyway. Could you please meet us? Trump has agreed to the meeting. But the interesting part here is demonstrating that also Republican neocons and also Democrat foreign policy hawks are a third faction that are pushing for further war in the Middle East. And Lindsey Graham was a classic example of it. Lindsey Graham was a war hawk. And so in this Times article published today, we're going to read for you what it said to demonstrate the point. A British documentary maker filmed 400 hours of video with Graham in the 3 years before his death this month. In the last interview for the project last month, as Trump signed a preliminary deal with Iran, Graham said, this is after Trump signed the Memorandum of Understanding, Lindsey Graham said, in bold there, you can see it there, he's letting this thing slip away. I got to talk to him. To carry on reading, most of the clips released so far were recorded only a few days after Trump launched the war in Iran. One shows Graham pointing at television coverage of the war and saying to the camera, look at what we've done here. I almost cried. How long have we been pushing this? It's here. I talked with Trump this morning. He's jacked. He said, best thing I've ever done. He loves blowing stuff up. Again, you can see the bold now. We're going to read it for you. The recordings also feature a one-on-one call between Graham and Benjamin Netanyahu. Surprise, surprise. Right? Israel's prime minister. To carry on reading from the Times, which the senator, Graham, begins by saying, I'm just so impressed. Glad to be your friend. After, Netanyahu replies, I'm glad you are my friend. Graham says he plans to go to Florida to encourage Trump to join in with Israel's military campaign in Lebanon and asks the prime minister if he would have liked that. In other words, Graham's asking for Netanyahu's approval to ask Trump to join Israel in bombing Lebanon after the Memorandum of Understanding had already been agreed. This demonstrates what we're saying. There are three factions interested in war. The Iranian Theocracy, obviously. The Likud Zionists in Israel under Netanyahu should be obvious to everyone, even though it's not. And the neocon warhawks from the Uni Party in Washington, D.C. This includes the Democrats, but primarily led by the Republicans under figures such as the late Lindsey Graham. That should also be obvious, but it isn't to many people. Now Lindsey Graham has passed away. One wonders if the neocon warhawks will still have the capacity and ability to lobby MAGA to carry on the war. Of course, don't forget, they've just sent Laura Loomer over to Ukraine to interview Zelensky. And now Zelensky's in DC, and the attempts are going to be to charm Trump into carrying on the war in Ukraine. And no doubt Netanyahu is going to try and convince him to carry on attempting to regime change Iran. But we don't think that's going to happen. You heard it here first, folks. Radical Media, we're not of the view that Trump will go for regime change. We've always said, that's why we say you heard it here first, because we've been consistent on this since we started this platform. Trump wants peace, not war. Netanyahu wants war, not peace. And you're seeing it all unfold now. And of course, Trump will stick to his original plan. It's just a matter of how he manages through diplomacy to get the Israelis to stop being war hawks. Well, partly he's got to deal with his own war hawks in the Uni Party in Washington in the swamp. And that's part of the problem that he's dealing with. Now, move to the next point. What are the Iranian theocracy's operational capabilities to attack the UK? Well, you can see here the Telegraph headline on your screens, and this is reported on the 24th of July. It's new news in the UK, and that is headlined, Iran smuggling agents into the UK as channel migrants. Subheading, Tehran boasts it is positioning revolutionary people in London through secret network. So what Iran or the Iranian theocracy is trying to do is smuggle its operationally capable agents in through the small boats with the waves of migrants that are coming to the UK so that they can presumably have them as sleeper agents here in the UK and set them off whenever they are ready. Now, if you break this down, this is all figures from the Telegraph. You can see the graph that's on your screens now. Telegraph reports 25th of July, 2026 from the Migrant Observatory. And you should be able to see it. We're going to blow it up for you so you can see it because the text is important, because the one that's the most migrants have come from the top country there, and you can see that it's clearly Iran. Surprise, surprise. Iranian small boat arrivals are the highest. Number of small boat arrivals by nationality since 2018, 30,269 from Iran. Next up is Afghanistan. 27,422 since 2018 have arrived in small boats from Afghanistan. Next up is Iraq, 19,157. Now, those top three countries are a problem. Now, they are a problem. Just have a look there. You can see it on your screens. That the fact that Iran's number one there is an incredible problem, but they are a problem because of this headline that we have just shown you in the Telegraph a few days ago. And that is because, as the headline indicates very clearly, they are a problem because the Iranian theocracy has threatened to smuggle operatives in through the wave of those migrants. And of course, if migrants top the list from Iran, it becomes especially easy to smuggle Iranian regime operatives in with all the rest of the Iranian migrants, one presumes, claiming asylum in Britain because they don't like the Iranian regime. But how many of those are genuine and how many of those are being smuggled in by the Iranian regime itself? That is a concern. And even all the other countries we listed there, you can see spot number 1, 2, and 3. Go to Iran, Afghanistan, Iraq. Countries that have been at war with us. Of course, in Afghanistan and Iraq, wars that we began. In the case of Iran, wars that Iran started in its long war by trying to export the revolution, not least in countries like Afghanistan and Iraq. But it's no getting around the fact that we invaded Afghanistan and we invaded Iraq. Regardless, those countries, therefore, have some of the people in those countries will have a grudge against us. And so it's not good for us that the top three countries of migrants coming to the UK are Iran, Afghanistan, and Iraq. Happens to be the top three countries we've been at war with. It will be the case that some of the people coming in hate us. If the shoe were on the other foot, you would be the same. If a country invaded Britain and you had an opportunity to go to potentially to that country that invaded us with a wave of migrants, some of the people with you who are fleeing this country because it's now war-torn and occupied, some of them, you would understand, would hate that country that invaded us. It's a no-brainer. So we've got a problem. We've got quite a large problem, actually. And that is what people have been warning about. This is the route that they travel. You can see that. You should be able to see that on your screens through the map there. All of this will include in the Radical Dispatch tomorrow. They come from Iran, go through Turkey, land in Italy, go through France, and then end up from Calais to Dover. And of course, that is an explanation of that route. We'll publish all of this in the Radical Dispatch tomorrow for you all. But Here is Nigel Farage making it very clear, and he's right, that he's been warning that the Iranian theocracy will attempt to use the migrant routes to smuggle in operatives to attack us. And since this news broke, Farage posted this, which is enlarged on your screens now. He says the Telegraph front page, it was on the front page of the Telegraph, the Telegraph front page reports Iran is smuggling its operatives into Britain via the English Channel. I've been warning about this since April. Farage has been warning about it. Of course, those who follow my work prior to Radical Media and even prior to LBC will know that we, as Quilliam, the world's first counter-extremism organization, have been warning about this for over a decade and have been ostracized, stigmatized, blamed, cancelled for saying this. Now, very few people are denying it. Oh, how times have changed. But of course, now Farage is there. He's saying the same thing. And moving on, what are Iran's base of operations? Well, yesterday I appeared on Michelle Dewberry's GB News for Dewes & Co. debating this topic with Barry Gardiner MP, who's a Labour MP. Now, on the topic of Iran having a base of operations in the UK to coordinate all of this, we discussed the very specific case of the so-called Islamic Centre for England in Maida Vale. The Islamic Centre for England has been, up until now, operating as a proxy or a front for the Iranian theocracy. And we're going to bring you details of that. We might as well just play you the clip instead of explaining it again. So we said this last night on GB News with Michelle Dewberry. We'll blow it up on your screens so you can listen to it and see it properly. And just take a listen to this.
Home Office. It's allowing the Islamic Centre of England, which has been suggested by many, it's been an Iranian charity, to sponsor visas for migrant workers. I want to just get to the crux of this, just for time reasons. Yeah. Why is this so problematic in your view, Majid?
Well, it's problematic because the so-called Islamic Centre of England has been serving up until a Charity Commission investigation into them only recently, right? So the only time stopped is because they were being investigated, but they have been served as a front for the Iranian theocracy in Britain. The Islamic Centre of England is a front for the supreme leader of Iran. The Board of Trustees, and I'll read it directly, the governance rules required its Board of Trustees of the Islamic Centre of England to have and include a religious representative of Iran's supreme leader on their board. And that's why it's problematic, because right now the Iranian theocracy has threatened to attack Britain. And it's not just because of the recent conflict. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard has tried to attack us over 20 times in the last few years. So we've got a regime that is bent on attacking us, believes that the Western way of life is Satan incarnate, right? And they've got a centre here that serves as effectively as a base of operations. The Iranian regime recently told the Telegraph, again, and I'll just quote it for you, we do not need a missile to target London. What do you think they meant by that? We do not need a missile to target London. The reason is that they've got active human resources in our country already prepared to engage in what they call self-sacrificing or suicide missions. And we've also recently discovered that they've been smuggling operatives across the channel with the migrants. So you've got a regime that is not only bent on attacking us, but has operationally acquired, even if it's minimal, a level of capability to do so. One wonders with the Berlin and France attacks if there is any connection. We don't know yet, right? But this is problematic because if they've got this base and they've got this representative serving in the Islamic Centre of England, what are they instructing young Muslims around the country to believe in and do against this country?
So what on earth we're playing at?
What on earth are we playing at? Well, there you go. So that's in terms of operationally and operational capability. They have that base through the so-called Islamic Centre for England, which is based in Maida Vale. And from that base, and the Board of Trustees, up until the Charity Commission began investigating them, had in writing that one of the trustees for the so-called Islamic Center for England needs to be a representative appointed by the supreme leader of the Iranian theocracy. From that base, they were able to incite British Muslims against our own country. You can see on your screens now an article in the BBC that's dated 2024. So this one isn't recent, but it's to the point. You'll hear and see what we mean in a minute. Headlined, UK officials probe Iran generals, anti-Semitic talks to students. But the key point here, I'm going to read from the article from the BBC. The footage, which also included a denial of the Holocaust, adds to growing concerns from some MPs that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, is attempting to radicalize UK Muslims. By the way, that's true. They are attempting to radicalize UK Muslims. They have been doing so for over a decade, if not over 2 decades. Take that from me. However, we're going to carry on reading from the BBC. Security services have also warned it is inciting violence and plotting to kidnap or kill people on British soil. The IRGC has previously been linked to kidnap and assassination plots in the UK. Counter-terror police confirmed in February last year that 15 such plots had come out of Iran since 2020, and the BBC has since been told there's been at least one more. Okay, 15 such plots by the IRGC to kidnap or kill people in the 24 by the BBC. However, as we've just read to you at the top of this stream, it's now over 20 such plots in the last 4 years. So it is a big deal. Now, back to the Telegraph on the 25th of July, still on this theme of the Iranian theocracy having a base of operations in the UK. We're going to read from the Telegraph, but the most worrying part is that while the government appears to be overwhelmingly focused on a conventional Iranian strike, it is once again, in bold, overlooking the IRGC's asymmetric terrorist capabilities in the UK. To carry on reading, this is a column in the Telegraph, and I'm not just talking about thugs for hire. Notwithstanding the latest revelations, the IRGC has had a long-standing covert presence in Britain. It has de facto built an entire soft power infrastructure on British soil under the legitimate guise of mosques, charities, and colleges. That is correct. This article in the Telegraph was written by a St. Andrews academic. In fact, that's the author of the top piece. We'll just go back to it to show you the author of the piece there. The author of this Telegraph article, there we are on your screens, Kasra Arabi. He is a St. Andrews academic. He's a Iranian American who's now working in the British Scottish University of St. Andrews. And he's that column that there we just read for you is his own writing. He specializes in this topic. We'll tell you, as somebody that's been working on counter-extremism for all of my life, been involved in the topic, working on counter-extremism since 2008 in a serious policy and senior level. That is correct, what we just read for you. That is what's been happening. The Iranian regime has indeed been developing asymmetric terrorist capabilities using the legitimate guise of mosques, charities, and colleges, as that Telegraph article reports. To carry on reading from the Telegraph, the effectiveness of this model is that while the infrastructure is not officially registered in the IRGC's name and is not directly created, financed, or run by the group, it nonetheless facilitates affiliated activities while providing the regime with enough space to deny responsibility. All right, to carry on reading now, this is from the Telegraph on the 25th of July. Oh, actually, yep, that's the same date. That's the same article. He says, I, which is Kasra Arabi, the author, have personally spearheaded investigations exposing how senior IRGC commanders, including those involved in terror plots abroad, have been in contact with university students, with university student associations in Britain via Zoom. They even called on these students to join their so-called apocalyptic army that would bring an end to the life of Zionists and Jews across the world. This was not a one-off. Only a few months ago, the Iranian embassy in London issued a call for British Muslims to register for self-sacrificing suicide missions. So, to break it down for you, the Iranian theocracy wants war, the Likud Zionists want war, and the neocon warhawks in Washington, D.C., formerly led by the late Lindsey Graham, also want war. President Trump, working with the Pakistanis and the Qataris and other allies, want a long peace to end the long war, what we're calling the Grand Regional Settlement for Peace. However, those parties that do want war, such as the Iranian theocracy, are now operationally capable of striking at American allies such as us, the UK, in our own country, and they don't need long-range missiles to do so. And the Labour government is acting as if the only threat is coming from the long-range missiles, while ignoring the fact that they have human resources inside our country already, and that the Iranian theocracy is operationally capable of, even though albeit to a weak level, still nevertheless operationally capable of striking via those human resources in our country. And this is where we come to UK government complicity. Again, you can see a headline on your screens there. We will read it for you. Dated the 11th of February this year, 2026, Home Office accused of failing to close Iran's London office. Now, we had obviously just explained to you that the so-called Islamic Centre of England had as its rules of governance the clause that the Board of Trustees needed to be comprised of at least one directly appointed person by the supreme leader of the Iranian theocracy. And that's what this Telegraph article's headline is about, dated from last February, enlarged now on your screens. You can see it there. Home Office accused of failing to close Iran's London office. And that's the so-called Islamic Centre of England that we were discussing earlier. Subheading, Cabinet split over whether to declare Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, or the IRGC, a terrorist organization, leads to Whitehall deadlock. That's by Camilla Turner in the Telegraph, 11th of February, 2026. So now we're discussing how it isn't just those hostile factions that want war while Trump is seeking the long peace, but it's also the fact that there are entities and institutions and organizations that are complicit with making the problem worse. And one of them is the British Home Office. The GB Politics reported, you can see on your screens now, the Home Office has given the Islamic Centre of England powers to sponsor visas for skilled workers and religious ministers. The charity is an alleged outpost for the Iranian regime in London. And we've commented on top of that via our social media feeds, the very simple line, which by now over the course of this stream, we've demonstrated to you the following, and we'll just read it for you. The charity, we've quoted from the GB Politics post, the charity is an alleged outpost of the Iranian regime in London, end of quote. Not alleged, we said. It is an outpost of the Iranian regime in London. And we hope by now that that's clear. We've demonstrated it with the receipts over the course of this stream, and we will publish all of these receipts for you in the written version of this stream with tomorrow's Radical Dispatch. But to carry on demonstrating how it is, reading again from the Telegraph on the 25th of July, 2026, which is once more on your screens about here. You can see there, and we'll read it for you. Perhaps even more disturbingly, in bold now, the new Supreme Leader Mujtaba Khamenei, an IRGC militant in a turban, continues to maintain an office in London. He even has a personally appointed representative, a senior mullah, a personally appointed representative. It's what we were discussing earlier in the so-called Islamic Centre of England, right? A personally appointed representative, a senior mullah who, despite continuously expressing extremist views that are sympathetic to the IRGC, not only continues to reside in the UK, but runs several charities in his name, now in bold. This individual does not hold a diplomatic passport, meaning his visa could be immediately revoked. But this, of course, has not happened. If the IRGC seeks to attack Britain, it could, at least in theory, activate this radicalized Islamist constituency for acts of homegrown violence and terror. Now, it is interesting, right, that the British government, as represented by the Home Office, is very almost trigger happy in deciding who to ban from coming into the UK by denying visas at risk of public disorder. And yet the directly appointed representative of a country we are currently allied against in a war can appoint directly a representative on a non-diplomatic visa to coordinate through their base of operations in the so-called Islamic Centre of England in Maida Vale, while they threaten us directly that they're going to attack us. And we don't revoke the visa of the person that's been appointed by the supreme leader of the Iranian theocracy, even though it's not a diplomatic visa. Mary Harrington has commented on all of that with the following words, which you should be able to see on your screens now. And this was again on her social media. saying, starting to wonder if it might be time to look at who we have working in the Home Office, meaning are they suspicious? And you can see we commented on top of that saying, yes, we were trying to raise this. We were trying to raise these issues years ago. Subsequently, the Home Office has tried very hard to ostracize us. They nearly succeeded, but they didn't. We are coming. You can see there, because the Home Office has been complicit in all of this, and people are beginning, such as Mary Harrington there, starting to wonder if it might be time to look at who we have working in the Home Office. Because why are they enabling the hostile intentions of the Iranian theocracy while they are directly telling us that they intend to attack us? And of course, do so via their base of operations in the UK, which is the so-called Islamic Centre of England, in which they have a appointee that serves the supreme leader. And the same government that claims to be protecting us failed in prescribing the IRGC as a terrorist entity under Keir Starmer as one of his outgoing actions. Yes, he did use the Hostile States Act to prescribe the IRGC as a hostile state actor, but he didn't use terrorism legislation to prescribe it, though the IRGC engages in direct terrorism and openly admits to doing so. So again, you can see the Telegraph headline on your screens. In fact, let's blow that up, because pay attention to this one, folks, because after reading you this, we're going to play a debate for you from last night's GB News, where I debated against a Labour MP, Barry Gardiner, and he was denying this. But when we read this for you and then you hear him denying it, you're going to understand why what I was saying, I made 2 points: that Labour has not banned the IRGC under terrorism legislation, and they have not revoked the visa of the person serving in the base of operations for the Iranian regime in London. And Mr. Gardiner, MP for Labour, member of the Labour Party in government, got quite upset on that first point. But this is what I was referring to, which you should be able to see now enlarged on your screen. And don't worry, I'm going to play for you the debate after this, but you should be able to see the headline in the Telegraph. And it states, we'll just read it for you as well, 14th of July, by that same author, the St Andrews academic Kasra Arabi, Starmer's botched IRGC ban leaves Iran free to rain terror on Britain. And we'll just read a section for you from the Telegraph. The designation was made under the newly enacted National Security State Threats Act, which is far weaker than full prescription under the Terrorism Act, the usual legislation used to designate terror entities. As a result, the designation will not counter the full spectrum of IRGC-linked activity in Britain, not least its ability to nurture homegrown Islamist radicalization and anti-Semitism on our streets. This is because the National Security State Threats Act was designed to counter hostile activity emanating from conventional and non-ideological state actors. Unlike the Terrorism Act, it does not explicitly prohibit the dissemination of IRGC-linked publications or materials, nor does it ban the display of IRGC uniforms or the publication of images in support of the group. The National Security State Threats Act also makes no explicit reference to self-directed acts, where an individual engages in conduct inspired by the IRGC's Islamist extremist ideology. Instead, the primary focus of the legislation is on those who have been directly commanded or financed by the designated body. These omissions were not for lack of knowledge. The tabled amendments to the then State Threats Bill, put forward by the Conservative front bench, would have filled these glaring gaps and made the legislation as robust as the Terrorism Act, but these were all rejected by Labour. You see, that's why in the following that you're about to see, we made the point about not sufficiently prescribing the IRGC, but Barry Gardiner, Labour MP, threw a tizzy. You'll see the tizzy now, and didn't actually address the point there that we were making. Here is the debate. This is a debate from last night on GB News between me and Barry Gardiner. And we're just going to blow it up on your screen so you can see it properly. It is quite heated, but also polite, civil, but heated nevertheless, because of course it's a serious matter. Take a listen to this. Well, that's if it works. And it looks like we've got a problem again. Let's try that one more time. Well, What we'll do, folks, sorry for the anti-climax. That's clearly not playing. What we'll do is put that out separately on our socials anyway after this stream sometime this evening. And while we're trying to see if that can, one last time, see if that works, but it doesn't seem to be wanting to. So we will, nevertheless, let's get rid of that for you. We'll put that out in the written dispatch tomorrow, and also on our stream, on our socials immediately after this stream, so you can watch it yourself. So go stay on our feed. If you're watching this on Twitter, if you're watching this on Facebook, if you're watching this on any of our platforms where this is streamed live, well, actually, just those two. We'll put it out on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and you'll be able to watch that debate. But also for our podcast subscribers, don't worry, the debate will be included in the written version of this stream, the Radical Dispatch, that we will publish tomorrow. So, but sometimes it just does that. Don't know why. We'll see what we can do about fixing it. But sometimes the embedded video doesn't want to play. So anyway, that's all we got time for today. That is the Warrior Creed live stream. We hope that makes some sense. President Trump is working to end the long war for a long peace. And there are parties, hostile parties, that are seeking to scupper that, among them the Iranian Theocracy, among them the Likudnik Zionists led by Netanyahu in Israel, and also among them the neocon warhawks in the Uni Party, both in Westminster in Britain and in Washington, D.C. And those neocon warhawks were predominantly Republican, led by Senator Lindsey Graham, who's just died. Let's now see if President Trump can actually achieve the long peace that he's been seeking for such a long time. Right, that's all we got time for today. But we thank you all for joining the Warrior Creed live stream. We'll be back next week at the usual time. And again, if you want the written version of this stream, the Radical Dispatch, go to majidnawaz.substack.com, and you can, of course, sign up. Free subscribers will get the Radical Dispatch, but premium paying subscribers will also, in addition, get the paywalled content for Radical Media and the podcast version of this stream, and all other paywalled content, including early access, early bird tickets to live events, and also guest list details for live events as well. And while we're on that topic, don't forget, this September the 11th in London at the Emmanuel Centre in London's Westminster, I'll be debating against Raymond Ibrahim. Is compatible with the West? And details for that are also provided on the Radical Media page, which you can see right here, majidnawaz.sub.com. That's all we got time for today. Until next week, you've been listening to The Radical for the Warrior Creed live stream.
You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge. Witness the strength. Street knowledge. Street knowledge.
Terrorize the jam like troops in Pakistan.
Street knowledge. Street knowledge. Quick service announcement brought to you in part by Warriors.